max bid at the moment, and so I do have fingers crossed on that. There's a few other, I think, interesting lots, and I don't know if Larry wants everybody to know, but I'm going to say it anyway because I already started the sentence. Larry already got a book out of this auction.
I did.
So
Nice.
congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah, I'm
And-
looking forward to it. Yeah, it's that Action Comics 52.
Yeah,
Hopefully nobody
Very
listening who's here I was bidding against. I'm sorry.
Well, it was that's an O'Brien cover, which is
I believe so, yes.
awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
So Larry and I generally, we like the same books. We
compare
similar
notes.
budgets, so we usually talk beforehand and make sure that we don't stumble over each other. So
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to mention real quick before we jump in is the Facebook group that we are all members of and that Peter contributes regularly to. We all do, of course, but this is the first time Peter's on our show. And I just want to say thanks to everybody there for making it a wonderful collaborative community. And if you haven't checked it out yet, or if this show is not enough to whet or to satiate your appetite for comic book conservation during the week, come check us out over there. We'd love to see you. And without any further ado, I think what we're going to do is jump into our program today. We basically just making it an all Professor Peter program. And the reason why is because when we started this show, I said when we have guests on, we're going to do their origin stories. We started this show, episode 1, with our origin stories, and I said this will be a fun tradition to keep up. So I asked Peter to put together some slides to sort of give his background. He's been in comic books for over 5 decades, and I just think it's amazing. So I think everyone will really enjoy that. And then he's got a whole bunch of really interesting conservation projects that he has put content up on the Facebook group and also his YouTube channel. And I thought they would be great jumping off points for further conversation. So in questions from us and from the viewers. So we're going to jump right into it. And unless anybody else has anything to say, Peter, I think the stage is yours. Give us your origin story and just ping me with next slide when you need it.
Can I just say I like the Adam West poster that was in that last slide?
Oh, thank you. This was in Beverly, which is the town next door to us here. I live in Salem, Massachusetts. So in Beverly,
Nice.
They had an art week, and they had these posters everywhere. They had about 50 of them as you drive through. So I inquired. I said, "What are you guys going to do with the posters afterward?" They said some of them will throw out, and some of them we'll sell them if you want.
Oh.
I said, I'd love to buy one. I ended up buying one for, I think,
cool.
$50. Yeah.
Very nice.
So I have it in my room, and I dress up as Batman around Halloween, and
Nice.
big Batman fan. Yeah.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
So thank you, guys. Thank you for having me, Dr. Paul. And
Our
everybody.
pleasure.
Really, thank you. So I was born in Syria. I'm from Damascus, Syria. This is my family on the left, the early family, of course, and I am the guy in the middle there. My dad was an accountant, and he was great with numbers. He would add 100 numbers together in no time whatsoever. So he had that kind of mind. My mom was a homemaker, and this is my brother Tony, my older brother Tony, sitting in front of her there. And these are some of the comic books that I still have with me here.
Wow.
Yeah, I have them here in Salem. Most of my comics are still in Syria till today, in Damascus, in our apartment. Mom and dad passed away since, of course, so the apartment has been vacant now for the last 7 or 8 years. But everything in it is still there. Neighbors check on it. Everything is fine. So no big deal, right? So
No big deal. No big deal. We're just going to jet over to a war-torn country and get your comics and save them, bring them back.
I know. Last time I was there, that's when I got them. Last time I was there was 2010. I went down there for my dad's funeral, and I took a bunch of volumes with me, right? I have some of them here even. So you can see how they look like.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're practical.
They're not in color on the inside. They have like three main colors, right? Four main colors: blue, orange, and white, and something else. And that's it. The cover is in color. So you can see the cover is in color.
Oh yeah.
This
Very
one says Superman on the top in Arabic here. Superman, the powerful man. It says Superman, the powerful man. These were printed in Beirut, Lebanon. So they had a license to print DC comics. We had no Marvel comics, unfortunately. So I never really read Spider-Man or Iron Man until I got to the United States here. And I got here in 1979. So I was in England for about a year before I got to the US in August of 1979. So I've been out of Syria for a long time, right? I lived in Syria 20 years and here 45 years already. And I became a US citizen in 1990. So I'm Syrian American, proud Syrian American.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys. This is me in my childhood. So you can see me in my first communion. I am Melkite Catholic. So there is about maybe 2 million of us worldwide. And we're mostly in the Middle East, right? In Syria and in Lebanon. That's where you find us mostly. And my background is mostly Syrian, Eastern Mediterranean, but also Armenian from my grandmother's side. My grandmother was in the Armenian genocide and she escaped into Syria when she was a kid with her uncle and aunt. And her parents perished during the massacre at the time. And she met my grandfather, and the rest is history, as they say. So these are, I don't know, I have a repeat of the same picture twice, don't I? I didn't take it out. All right. And this is my brother Tony in the outskirts of Damascus in around 1965, 66, around then. And on the right-hand side is later on in the probably 1971 or 72. My brother Camille was born in 69, so he was about 2 or 3 years old in this picture. And here you can see me with a teacher in England who taught me how to speak English. So I didn't speak English until I left the country. I spoke French and I speak Arabic, of course, and I spoke French more fluently than I do now. I can still read French and understand it, but I can't speak it that well. This is Mom here on the right-hand side in Florida. We were in Florida at Disney World because I was a big Disney fan. I read all the comics that were in Arabic. And this is my dad, maybe a few years before he passed away in Damascus with my grandmother, who's Armenian, right? And she died at the age of 100, so she was very pretty woman.
You have a long way to go yet.
Blonde eyes and all that, she had those features, she was gorgeous. And of course, I married a blonde, blue, green-eyed woman.
So here's Peter's better half on the
Elizabeth,
bottom right.
my better half, yeah. So glad. Yeah. So I went education-wise. I graduated high school from a school called Joseph the Great, or Yusuf al-Azmi in Arabic, we call it, in 1977. So this year was when John Travolta's Saturday Night Fever came along, and I had a white suit, and I used to go dancing with my friends, and we used to emulate the disco dances and all that. I had the hair, and I had the look, and I had everything. So that didn't last, of course. 77 till 70, January 6, 1979 is when I left Syria, and I ended up 3 days after my birthday, basically. I ended up in England, away from my friends and my family, and Dad sent the word. He said, if you can continue on to the United States and apply for colleges there, please do so. So I did apply to 3 colleges, and I got accepted by all 3. Eventually ended up going to Suffolk University, graduated from there with a degree in biology in 1983. Biology wasn't my favorite subject, oddly enough, but I somehow excelled in it, right? And eventually I went to Northeastern University, got my master's degree in microbiology there. And in 1986, I had been married for a year already in 86 by the time I graduated. So the question was whether to continue on with my PhD or just stick with the master's. Ended up sticking with the master's. I had to work. So I ended up doing research so my research topic at Northeastern was cellulolytic bacteria and their enzymes, right? So I studied cellulose digesting microbes, including bacteria and fungi, but mostly bacteria.
This was your
And looked at their
master's
enzymatic
thesis.
actions. I'm sorry?
This was your master's thesis.
Master's thesis, correct,
Mhm.
yeah. And then there was a paper published eventually in a journal, but it's been a while. Work experience, I worked at Mass General Hospital as a technician in the lab, and then as a research scientist at Tufts University School of Medicine. And then I was a microbiology lab supervisor at Northeastern and database administrator at Boston University, oddly enough, for a couple of years there, and then currently teach microbiology at Salem State University.
So this is Salem, Massachusetts.
Correct.
I didn't look up the mascot. I assume it's like a black cat or something like that, Peter.
It isn't. It's a Viking.
A
Mascot is a
Viking? What? Somebody
Yeah, I know,
needs to
right?
talk
Yeah.
to the people there
Yeah.
about their brain.
Yeah, Salem, of course, the witch symbol is our symbol here. Not Salem State, yeah. So extracurricular activities, I wrote a computer program to identify bacteria called BioBase. I wrote it actually in 1989, MS-DOS, and then eventually wrote it for PC, for Windows. I published a paper on this with the CDC. And then I wrote 3 book lists. You can see them there on the right-hand side on Bewitched. You guys remember the show Bewitched?
Oh yeah.
Of course.
And Dora, and yeah. So I'm a big fan of Bewitched. So I wrote books on Bewitched, and these are pretty much about their visit to Salem in 1970. So the Bewitched cast and crew filmed in Salem in 1970, and I wrote about their story essentially. And this is the book in the middle called Salem Summer of Sam, which is very popular. I don't have any copies left of it, unfortunately. The book on the left-hand side is about the statue of Samantha in Salem, and this is a book I gave to Dr. Polo. So
Yeah, we got a picture in front of the
I saw
the
that.
bronze as well, which was
Yeah.
lovely.
Exactly. And then on the right-hand side is a book about their filming in Gloucester, which is a town north of Boston, right? So north of Salem, in Gloucester. So this talks about their activities in Gloucester. So basically, it's on the trail of Bewitched in Salem and Gloucester in 1970. I followed
Awesome.
their activities. And then, of course, I host a TV program called This Salem Life on Salem Access Television that airs infrequently. This last one I did was interviewed 3 detectives about the case of Tom Maimoni, if you ever heard of him. Maybe not. He killed a woman here in Salem, and then he was eventually he died in jail, basically, right? So this was the last interview I did last
Wow.
last time. And then comic books, of course, I put down comic book collector because I
Yeah,
don't read
and
so
we're-
much.
I think we have some slides to show some of.
Yeah.
Here's
Why did
you.
you
with
shave your head?
So
You have
I still
purple hair.
have hair. Oddly enough, I just have a bald spot, and I didn't like it too much, so I just shaved it. So and Liz likes me shaving, so I just shave my head. It's fine, yeah.
We're
I know I
going
have
that
plenty
way.
of hair, right? And everybody in my family has hair. My brother Tony, my brother Camille have thick hair. My sister Claude has thick hair, of course, and I'm the only one who lost a little bit, and I have a bald spot. My dad died with a full head of hair. You could see.
Yeah, and then they say that it comes through your mother's side of the family. My
Mostly,
grandfather
yeah.
in his 90s had full hair all the way down to here.
Wow.
My hairline's way back. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
just
what it
weird.
is.
There is like somewhere around 16 genes control hair loss,
Yeah.
and some of them are inherited from your mom, and some are from your dad, but mostly from your
Apparently, there were a
mom.
couple
Yeah,
dominant
most of them
ones
are
from Dad.
mother's side, but some are from father's side, right? So, and this is me on the right-hand side. If you take a look, if you go back one slide,
Yeah.
behind me is the Hocus Pocus house from the film Hocus Pocus, where they call it,
Oh yeah.
yeah, the Max and Danny house, I think they call it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cool.
That's, I think, last summer or something. I stood there.
And that's the origin. Extended now is the comic collection from your childhood.
Yeah, and from there, here are some of the comics that the one you see there on the left hand side says Mickey. We read from the right to the left. So so this is the front cover, is what you see is on the left hand side of the screen. On the right is the back cover of the album, and this is I made that album. I bound
I was gonna say, did you bind these yourself?
I did, yeah, I did. So
Very cool.
yeah, I found here it is.
Oh wow! You got
Nice.
it
Have it
right
with
there.
me, yeah. So it was bound originally, but the binding had fallen, and there was like no cover or anything, so I had to do it from scratch again. So it's
Very
all nicely
cool.
bound, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And this is another one I bound like last summer. This is just American comics. Comics, I
Yeah.
put them together for reading purpose, right? So,
Still
That's
very
great.
cool.
Yeah.
you know.
I mean,
awesome.
I think bound comics are kind of frowned upon, but they're also kind of awesome.
They're
Just
fun
depends.
because,
I mean, there is a market for
They're
them.
great to read. Like you just
Yeah.
said, they're reading, right?
yeah, I have a bound volume, has in it Hulk 180, 181, and
Hmm.
182. Bound volume. I bought it
That's
from on eBay at the time,
I've
years
seen
ago.
one of those before.
Yeah,
that's
I have it.
That's cool.
And they're not
Love it.
trimmed either. They're like, I have them downstairs.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it is cool. So next.
Yep.
And these are some other comics that I have on me here. Superman. And Superman and Batman were in the same book, so as if like you're reading World's Finest or something. But they took stories from Lois Lane and from Superman and from Right Action Comics, and they put them all in these Arabic books. And the covers sometimes are U.S. covers, and sometimes they're not. Like if you look on, well, you have to keep going. If you go one more slide. I
Before we move on, this is Colossal Boy on the bottom here from from Adventure Comics. That cover was a cover of Adventure Comics in the U.S. in the 60s.
Yeah, that's true. And this cover, Dr. Paul looked it up, and this was Lois Lane, right, Dr. Paul?
Lois Lane, Superman's
Yeah.
girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 133 was this
133.
cover.
Nick
Yep.
Carty cover?
Probably.
Beautiful color. Colors are gorgeous still on them.
That's awesome.
And they're all trimmed, unfortunately, but that's the binding in those days. My dad always took them to a bookbinder, and he always did that for us. So
That's
next,
so cool. It's actually Bob Oxner.
Oh, okay.
I was like, dare I look that up while
I was
trying to
curious.
host and also trying to bid on
Ambitious, but you did it.
yeah. See, here are some Superman
Oh, I
covers.
recognize that cover.
You reckon I do? Yeah,
that's
right.
cool.
Yeah, it is a cool cover, and you can see the Superman drawn here in the middle is not drawn by an American artist, right? It's not Kurt Swan. It's some of the Lebanese artists who drew Superman there
Mhm.
in the middle. So
These were real mashups.
kind of mash, yeah. There's a Colossal Boy again.
These are great.
Tintin is on the right-hand side. So Tintin, of course, was in French, and they translated that into Arabic. I read it in both French and Arabic. In French, I read also Asterix and Obelix. It's a pretty funny series. Yeah.
Very cool.
Most, yeah.
All right, that's kind of wraps up a segment. I'm going to do a couple shout outs here because we have a few people. We have Canadian Survivalist. Thanks for joining and checking in with us. We have Comic Cap Collectibles, who says hello. And he says, Yo, L, I appreciate all you resto vids. Amazing stuff, dude. I assume L is Larry. So that's for you.
Okay, thank you.
We're a few lots away from my lot, so keep your fingers crossed for me, folks. So it's great to have you, Peter, a bona fide paper scientist, someone who's published in the field, and I think your background, your education the way that you approach comic book conservation, it's based on that, and it shows in your content and in both on your YouTube channel and in the stuff that you share with us in the Facebook group. So we, as you know, as everybody knows, we already dedicated an entire episode, I think it was episode 7, to some of your previous work with rust removal,
Yes.
which was great. And you're going to walk us through some more of your work, I think a little more in depth there. And you're going to talk a little bit about your collecting before we move into the conservation, though.
Correct.
Oh, Unbothered Kitty's also checking in. That's a friend of the channel, Kat. It's great to see you here live.
Wonderful.
Take it away, Peter.
Thank you. So eBay came along, of course, in the mid-90s, but I didn't join eBay till 2001. And I bought almost 95% of my comics currently are from eBay.
Incredible.
And I lost count, but I have quite a few comics, and I bought most of my keys in the early 2000s, right? So, which is nice to keep. But one big mistake I did is I let go of 2 of my major keys in 2000.
Oh, we've all done that one, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man #1 and Journey into Mystery #83. Both of them, I sold them for $500 to a guy by the name of George, who is now a very rich guy. So I'm still not over it.
Is this your copy of AF-15? Or is
This is not my copy. This is just this is on my wish list to get when I'm a multi-millionaire. But it would be very nice to have an Amazing Fantasy #15 for sure. This is like my dream copy. If I ever want to get a copy of Amazing Fantasy #15, it'll be 9.0 or higher if I can afford it, of course.
Interestingly enough, eBay just sent me a little email saying, thank you for being a member of our community for 25 years.
Aw.
So apparently I
Wow.
joined in 99.
Same time as me, almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm in there too.
Are you?
Yeah. Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
So comics learning and conservation learning, a lot of it really, if you think about my background in science, my first encounters with comic conservations was on Jerry's channel, Jerry the Jitterbug, comic book collector. And he is so awesome, and he does such a great job and so entertaining. And you just he attracts you. And it's just I can't miss a single episode of this guy. I love Jerry. I listened to him since probably the debut of his channel, maybe a bit later. And he's evolved really quite a bit, and he's done magnificent work in the field. He's really one of those artisan people who can actually work on cars and work on comics, and very, very nice guy, right? And you see him, he doesn't show his face on camera. The first time I saw him, I thought he was so handsome looking.
You're why you're hiding, man?
But he goes, it's not about me, it's about the show, and it's about conservation. He goes, and he's so down to earth that way.
He actually showed up on a few other people's shows, and we saw his face there.
Yeah, I did see what he looked like.
Yeah. I like to say, there's a few videos out there and some content out there that open my mind up to what's possible. And his channel did that for me, especially very early on with that Hulk 181 that he conserved. And I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Jerry and what he's done on YouTube, what he's put out there publicly, and so great for you to also give him his due.
He's been a catalyst. I mean, he's been one of those. Yeah, a lot of people started because they watched a video and said, "Hey, that looks like something that I could."
Absolutely, I think the current kind of explosion of people doing leaf casting. We've talked about it before, but this is sort of like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and then within years, kids in high school were running, sub 4-minute miles after a century of scientists and everybody believing it was humanly impossible, right? For a very long time, it was Kenny Sanderson leaf casting, and I'm not aware of anyone else. And then Jerry came along, and it took a few years, but there's kind of a bunch of us now, and there's more every day. Peter's going to show us some leaf casting later today.
I hope so, yeah. And then after Jerry, of course, I discovered you, Dr. Paul, just totally by accident, like Googling and going on YouTube, and there you were. And you had a very scientific approach to things, and you're very delightful to listen to. You're a historian in many ways. You give a background story to everything you do, right? And then you go about it in very deliberate fashion. You can see the process going through it from A to Z. Everything is planned out. Everything is well analyzed, and conclusions are always there, and they're always, as expected, almost scientifically, right? So you have that way of attracting me, and I think being a scientist like you are also is something I truly appreciate. So I love your channels. I love your videos.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, we all come to this hobby from different backgrounds and experiences, and I try to leverage mine. And I try to create content that I would enjoy. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah. And then around the same time, of course, I discovered Flying L Comics and Captain Larry. And Captain Larry's videos are outstanding. And
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, and I still remember the catalyst for the rust migration removal was your video when you tried to remove the rust from that comic. And I said to myself, there has to be an easier way. There has to be a less smelly way, right?
Yes, I decided that myself. That was very smelly, but it worked. I destroyed the comic book in the process, but it did get rid of the rust.
Yeah, and some colors in your case, right? You lost some of the colors.
Anything that contained any color that had iron oxide in it disappeared.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah,
I always think of. Oh no! Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, when I think of like those things where you're like, it can be done better. I just remember when I learned from my mentor, like one of the ways to take stains out, and I look at my bottle of K2R carpet cleaner that I still have that I purchased because that was just something that they had learned to use 25, 30 years ago, because that was just what was available and what had been used and seemed to work, even though it wasn't nearly as efficient as other things or safe,
Yeah.
What fun.
Very smelly.
Yeah, I think that was probably my same journey. I think I stumbled across Jerry's channel, and then I stumbled across Paul's channel, and I was like, I think I can do this. And I just jumped in.
Get in there.
That's how I did it. So
Yeah, I did too, and I've done over 200 books so far, and
wow, that's great.
But most I can't even show you. I mean, they're really pretty bad. But so early on,
There's a
I
learning
messed up
curve.
a
There's a
lot,
learning
and
curve.
Yeah, but that's the nature of the. I shouldn't call it a hobby, but it is kind of sort of a hobby for me.
Yeah.
Right? More than anything.
I think of this as like a hobby within the hobby.
Therapy.
Therapy.
That too.
Therapy from your normal job.
Absolutely.
I'm the only one that kind of crosses, the bridge there between it being like, well, it is my job, and then also like, but it's fun. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, you took your fun and made it your job.
Yeah. So Phil doesn't have a channel on YouTube, unfortunately.
I'm a phantom for now.
You're a phantom, yeah.
Yes.
I will. I do intend to,
but you
I remember watching your
Hard to
interview
do that.
when Dr. Paul interviewed you at the CGC. I think was it CGC?
That was a moment.
It was.
I don't think we'd have this show if
No, we
that
wouldn't.
moment didn't
It
happen.
was
That
the
was-
Collector
that-
Summit last year.
Yeah, it was Collector
That's
Summit.
it.
That's the first time I had seen Phil.
Yeah. And I was very impressed, Phil. I mean, great job you do.
Thanks.
And
Thanks.
your input, I mean, your input into this show is absolutely amazing. So greatly appreciate your help.
I mean, I'm just a young guy that has, some experience doing this. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I try my best.
Yeah,
to,
nobody does.
lend an opinion when I think I might.
Haha, guys! Somebody tried to snipe me, but I cut bid them.
You got
I
it?
think it's mine. I think so. It's closed. I didn't see anybody outbid me.
Oh, well.
No, that means you got it.
I think so.
Congratulations.
I hope you
All
got
right,
it.
now you guys can have my full attention. Just imagine how annoying I'll be now.
And then, of course, I started my own channel around the same time I discovered Shelby's Comics. So our friend Shelby is an excellent raconteur, and he does a great job with his videos, and I watch him
Oh,
often.
yeah.
Actually. I've even
Absolutely.
seen one of his live shows where Phil was on it, right? I've seen
Yeah,
that.
Shelby.
And his
Yeah,
other
Shelby.
live shows. Yeah.
He and I talked for about an hour day before yesterday on the phone, and absolutely brilliant
Delightful.
person. Yeah, delightful to talk
PhD
to.
in psychology.
No,
Yes.
Shelby is a
Yeah,
really
he-
nice
him and-
guy.
he-
and
careful what you
Human
say.
factor.
He's like analyzing you guys.
analyzing that, but he's really sophisticated.
No, I'm-
really. He's
I'm
really
easy to
sweet.
figure out.
Sent me a good luck right before the show. He
Yeah,
said,
good luck
I'll
figuring
be
me
watching.
out."
So hi Shelby, I hope you're watching.
He
No,
is.
he's a-
yeah,
he's-
he's here
Well,
in
he's
the chat,
watching. He's right there. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
watching.
fellow Texan,
Yeah.
and we're going to be seeing him at the Collector Summit too.
We
It's
will.
going to be fun.
That's great.
I'm looking
Next
forward to
slide.
that.
Yeah. So the
So
first
now
thing I
we're
want
gonna-
to tackle is mold. And
Yeah, so
my successes
we have
and
a number
failures.
of shorter segments that could be longer if we get into discussing them. But the first one is on mold mitigation here, which is something we all have to deal with from time to time in comic books.
Yeah. So the first thing is how you kill molds, right? So there are some chemical means you can kill molds, but you don't want to go the chemical way on comics for sure, because they tend to be very harsh. Molds are very robust. They make a lot of spores, and these spores can dispense in the air. You could inhale them. They make mycotoxins. They make proteins that are dangerous to you and me.
Nasty
So,
stuff.
and yeah, so anytime you see people working with mold, they're working with masks and gloves and
Yep.
and so this book I got actually this is Amazing Spider-Man number 122, The Death of the Green Goblin.
Famous splash page.
Yeah. So it's really a cool book. I think I brought it with me here. The mold is dead on it now, so I don't mind showing it to you here in the living room.
Here.
And yeah, and you can see the colors faded a little bit because it went into the oven to kill the mold. So the paper that discusses killing the mold says if you put it in the oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for half an hour, you should be able to remediate the mold and kill it alongside some other bacteria, Staphylococci and Salmonella and so on.
So this is exactly how I approach conservation. I have a problem. I go to the peer-reviewed literature on conservation. It's a rich literature. There are a number of journals going back, at least 50 years, if not deeper. And there's just a vast body of knowledge most comic book folks are not aware of, even folks that are practicing conservation. And so I just love this approach where you have a problem, you have a book with mold, you go out and you find a solution, because this is how science works, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel every few years because
Absolutely.
we have documented how to make a wheel here. So it's great. I love this.
Yeah.
So this
the-
particular one you put in the oven, but
So this went actually. I have other books that went into the autoclave at
Right.
work. So I put them in an autoclave bag, essentially stuck them in. So an autoclave is essentially a large pressure cooker. It can elevate the temperature to 121 degrees Celsius under pressure. So what comes out of the autoclave is essentially sterile. It's all sterile.
right? But it's also shorter duration.
And
So
it's shorter duration.
less,
Well, it's
safer for the
half an
business.
hour also, the same duration really, but the cycle takes about an hour to fill, but it's steam under pressure, right? So
right.
you have a lot of
Not as
steam.
harsh, not as harsh
Yeah.
on the comic as the oven in terms of the paper degradation, right?
Yeah, well, I found actually autoclave, I found it to be less harsh than, it comes
Right.
out a little bit steamy, but the colors are actually more stable. When you put it in the oven though, when I put this in the oven, notice that the colors now are all orange.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Let me,
That was the one thing that kind of scared me on
You
the
want to
oven.
show it again?
Yeah.
I mean, better to have dead mold and faded colors than live mold.
Right, right.
So it's a
So there
compromise.
is another way you could do it. You don't have to go all the way to 300 degrees. You could do 200 degrees for
Just longer
a
duration.
longer period, right?
Mhm.
And another way of doing it also is to, there's another method they list here, 100 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes. So that's the 200 degrees, right? 200
Yeah.
degrees. Yes.
So
100.
mold mitigation is kind of three-step in my mind, and maybe we
Yeah.
can just discuss it. We can elaborate on it. But
Yeah.
first thing is kill active spores, right? Remove physical spores and etc. bodies from the paper, and this is a great way to kill them. That is safe. Does cause some paper degradation, but again, we're trying to save what's left. If we do nothing, for sure it's gone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we
That's
do this,
exactly
at
true.
least we can salvage something. Then the next part is removal of the mold stains, because the molds make many different chromophores. They tend to make these black ones, brown ones, pink, green, all kind of colors. And those chromophores tend to get embedded in the paper and can be a real bear to remove, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've done is bleach them, right? You can clean them only so much because most of them are actually bonded into the paper
Yeah.
they're embedded pretty well.
Yeah.
So cleaning is one step, but bleaching is often necessary to mitigate some of the stains. And then lastly, you want to do something to protect the paper from future mold infestation, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about your leaf casting, right, Peter?
The formula, the stuff, the functional processes I put in my leaf casting. Yeah.
Right. So
Addition, the additives I use.
we'll
yeah.
leave that as a
Yeah,
teaser. Are we
Exactly.
ready to move on
So-
from this?
So one thing you notice about this book actually is that when I first got it, I was very careful with it. I took it straight to my lab actually, and I did wear gloves. I went under the hood with it. And you could use a vacuum cleaner and you could vacuum some of the thalli of the fungus off the book. So there was some cleaning initially done before I put it in the.
You do that before, or is it
Yeah.
just as easy to do after killing?
You can do it after. The problem is when you put it in the autoclave, what I found out is that the circles darken, right?
Yeah.
All
Can I
the
ask-
mycotoxin, the proteins that the fungi
If
are
you were to-
releasing is darkening the circle. the paper.
If you were to try cleaning it before putting it in the oven, wouldn't of those spores be active too, though?
They are.
So then you're potentially contaminating the thing that you're. So really, in any case, theoretically, you would always want to
Yeah.
put it in the
So I
heat
show you.
source
I show
first
you the
before
next. Yeah.
touching it at all.
So I'll show you the next assay video because next assay, when I'll talk about it. So on this book, it didn't work. On this book, though, the assay I'm going to talk about next.
I guess before we jump into that, the answer, Phil, is yes. But if
Yes.
you have a dedicated HEPA vacuum, then you can do it safely, and you can remove them without causing further staining in the paper.
Yeah.
So if you have that, then it is preferable to do it while they're still active and live.
See, I'll openly admit that I have some ignorance on mold because in my initial research on it, I didn't come to this conclusion so easily, and I know that it's very unsafe to handle it very casually. So I always was kind of like, it's beyond my capabilities. I want to.
The professor has access to a biosafety cabinet and a HEPA vacuum and a lot of equipment that the general populace doesn't have.
Yeah. And the other thing about mold is that they like humidity, right? So if you have a humid day, these spores can really land everywhere. They might germinate and give rise to new mold, right? So paper in general, if it's dry, it's not really going to be as susceptible to mold contamination, if you will, growth, if you will, right? But once it is wetted, like if you have a flooding, and this wasn't a flood clearly at one point, exposed to water and just like left alone, you had the mold growing on every single page, which I ended up treating in an assay with betaine and papain. So I'll show you the assay in a second. Sorry, I dropped my sizing agent, the ketene dimer. Okay. So if you look at this book was cleaned and conserved, and you can see few dots of black on the surface of the cover or under the Z.
Oh,
And in my new PowerPoint, in my new presentation I sent you, Dr. Paul, you could see me like circling it. Did that work or no?
Oh, do I not have the?
I sent you the new one.
Did
I think
I
this is the old one.
load? Oh, I loaded the wrong one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
You know what? I think I can bring it up relatively quickly. Why don't you talk and I'll try to do that as I go. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in under the ZZZs, right? You can see like some black dots underneath over his head, and these are all mold spots. And I used an assay that uses betaine, which is a biosurfactant, alongside with papain, which is an enzyme, proteolytic enzyme, to remove most of the mold went away. So when you look at the picture on the right-hand side, all the mold stains are gone. So the only stains that remain are a few of them that were resistant to removal. And the mold stains were superficial. They weren't like, they didn't penetrate the bilayer of the cover, right? Yeah. And I think that was a success. And also, in my opinion, the mold species that caused the contamination here is different than the mold species that was in the spider net. Yeah. So I'll show you the study in a second here.
Peter, this is the second one you sent me. I just double checked. So not sure what happened in the creation of the PDF or whatever,
right.
But this is our current one.
I might have sent you the same one by mistake. Okay.
I don't know if
it's
you're
okay. That's okay. This is perfect. This is fine. It has some errors in it, but
I don't know if you're saving this bit of info, but this one here was autoclaved, not put in the oven, correct?
Yeah, so this was autoclaved, not put in the oven.
So look, to my eye, the paper, rather than, I think the other one, sort of the paper yellowed a bit in the oven.
Yeah.
Whereas this, between the autoclaving and your cleaning the paper is actually brighter and hasn't noticeably.
What's the autoclaving again? Remind me.
It's the pressure cooker. It's a large.
That was the pressure. Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it is an oven, but it's a steam oven, essentially. And so under pressure, you have superheated water that the water vapor gets in there and just kills everything. And it does it quickly. And
it's
then
a pressure cooker.
Because it's so hot, the water evaporates out real quick too.
Yeah.
But no effect on the colors. I mean, look at the reds, and I mean, all the colors look exactly the same.
They look pretty good. They look pretty good, don't they? I mean,
certainly no, like, as a compromise of losing some color. It has no effect.
Yeah. I mean, without calling out other channels, I think an autoclave seems a much wiser choice than like ozone or really high concentrations of peroxide that can burn your fingers, etc.
Right.
Rick, I'm really not calling you out, but I am. But we'll have you on. We love you. But this seems like a much better for the book, better for you, safer and more reliable way to kill mold, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. All right. So this is a success, semi-success in removing most of the mold stain. Right. If you look close, you might still see like a little bit of mold there, but not much. And
it looks very good.
Oh, I thought it looks excellent.
When you say a little bit of mold, the mold is gone. It's just the chromophores. Yeah, the chromophores that they leave behind.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of stain left.
Can I ask one question? I do just have a follow that's just been eaten at me. So I could have sworn in something that I read once that even if the spores are killed with heat, if they get wet, they can be reactivated easily. But that kind of so that's not true too. But also that would surmise like. If it was in a flood and it were to get contaminated in a way, it could get mold. It would be susceptible under the conditions of the flood anyway. So it does have nothing to do with the pre-existence of mold.
Yeah, the most resistant structure in microbiology is the bacterial endospore and the spore. So bacterial spores, even bacterial spores, the most resistant ones, can die in the autoclave. won't germinate again, won't outgrow into bacteria again.
But
Molds are
so
more susceptible to heat than
once
bacteria.
they're dead, they're dead.
They're dead.
However, Phil, they can lie dormant for decades, maybe centuries. So this is why you have to make sure they're dead.
Sure. Yeah.
So they can be inactive, and somebody can go, "Oh, well, this is dead," but it's not dead. It's an inactive, and it can become activated in the presence of moisture.
So theoretically, it could be tough to know unless you've done it yourself, or there's prior provenance of the book saying this has been done. Because really, if the staining's still going to be there in most cases, then you're not going to know unless you've done it yourself. Okay, interesting.
Right. So if you go to the next slide, and you see the study there, and it's called a biological cleaning agent for removing mold stains from paper artifacts. And actually, much like Dr. Paul was saying, here they used some old books that had the fungal staining, and they were able to revive the mold from these stains. So the mold spores were still active in there. They were able to grow them on agar plates and look at them and study them. They were like a couple of Aspergillus species in there. And they used those mold as a prototype, and they took them and they contaminated some paper, and they looked then for the effect of biosurfactants. These are surface acting reagents, much like soaps are, cleaning agents essentially, but these are produced by organisms, microbes or beets, or some organism produces them, right? So they're pretty safe, pretty effective at cleaning. I found them highly hygroscopic. One of them is called betaine, betaine agent. So if you open it, you can see that it's already getting these lumps inside. I'm not sure if you can see them or not. Maybe not.
No, not really.
Yeah, it's white. That's why it's difficult to see. But it can absorb water like crazy. So initially, I didn't really look at that aspect of it. I was looking at it as a cleaning agent, largely. And there is a lot of benefit to betaine. In this paper, actually, if I may read this quickly, it says the impact on paper color difference, pH value, and tensile strength remained within reasonable ranges. Additionally, betaine exhibited properties such as deacidification, anti-acidification, anti-aging, and reinforcement for the paper.
That's awesome.
Actually, it really is awesome. So when you look at that paper, and when I was
benefits.
like this on the paper, it was like, oh, it adds to the tensile strength of the paper, but it doesn't really add to the tensile strength. It just reinforces the paper. So betaine is good that way, right? At least from that perspective. The other thing they use in this study is an enzyme called papain. Papain is a proteolytic enzyme that digests protein, essentially. So what happens is the enzyme goes in and finds the protein in the stain and digests it and loosens it, and not loosens it, but digests it, and then the betaine goes in and cleans it out, essentially.
Yep.
And if there is any fungal hyphae in there, they take them out at the same time. So their results that they show that in the paper when you take a look at it are fantastic, absolutely great. But they are sticking with one types of microbes, right? Aspergillus species. And then Dr. Paul and I last week were talking about, was it last week or yesterday? My memory is, anyway, but we're talking how you have more than one fungus that is cellulolytic and can grow on these books. And penicillium mold. I have a book, Planet Comics, that is fully contaminated with penicillium mold, green everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I see pink mold is the most common that I've come across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
actually a really
subtle.
beautiful color, but
Yeah, you're like,
on
oh,
our
look how
comments.
nice this is. Definitely not a book to go, smell the old paper on this one. Yeah,
Right. So in their study, if you take a look at the graphs, actually the paper does gain strength a little bit more than the other biosurfactants they use in there, like sulfolipids and all that. But I think in general, I was interested after the study in the betaine properties, in the cleaning properties of betaine, and the fact that it can add life to a book. It's anti-aging. That to me stood out, right? And then the strength part was something I noticed even on the Spider-Man. The books list felt stronger in general, right? I didn't do a tensile strength study on my own, but just subjectively looking at the wraps, they were noticeably stronger, right?
Yeah. And there's a whole series for those that want more in depth here. There's a whole series on Peter's YouTube channel about his use, how he applied it, the results with the book, etc. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
While I'm chatting, I'd like to say hi to Weed Richards 420, longtime supporter of the channel. Great to see you here in the live show. And Paulo Acomando, great to have you here. Hope I
also just to because it couldn't be said enough. If you're just tuning in, or you're very ambitious and you want to maybe go tackle some books with mold after watching this, do not forget.
Really, no.
You got to wear gloves and you got to wear proper. It's not a joke. This kind of stuff. If you haven't treated the mold and killed it yet, it's very serious stuff. You don't want to casually be handling this stuff.
Absolutely.
Can't be said enough.
Yep.
Right.
Ben says papain is also used as a meat tenderizer in food industry. Yeah, papain is a general proteolytic enzyme that actually has binding sites for a lot of different protein joints and has a lot of activity across a lot of different protein molecules.
Right. Exactly. So in this study, what they did, basically, they used 7% papain and 3%, 7% betaine and 3% papain.
Papain, yeah.
Yeah. So it worked for me for one book. It didn't work for the other book. But this book was probably far gone. There are 3 phases of fungal infections usually on books like these. In the first phase, you can get rid of the mold. Second phase, you might get rid of most of it. Third phase, like when they're too far gone like this one, impossible.
Yeah.
So the only way is like bleaching, like Dr. Paul said. You have to use chemical in this case.
Yeah.
Or you could kill it and then just like do leaf casting over it, right?
Yeah.
Like
so Peter, we're an hour in, and I'm really loving this. But I really want to get to leaf casting.
Let's get to leaf casting.
So I don't
know. We already covered the evaporust anyway.
We've talked about this. This was like I said, our episode 7. Again, hats off to you. We wanted to actually have you on that show, but you had a commitment with your wife's family. You couldn't join us. So we did a whole segment. We did a whole show on your content, really, and we appreciate you. Because of course we had your blessing to do that, and we appreciate that you shared that with us. And I think we're all smarter for it, and we've advanced the conservation, the comic book conservation field a little bit. So appreciate that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
But we've discussed it quite a bit. You do also have a bunch of follow-up videos on your YouTube channel, so I want to push people to that to check this out. But really incredible results with the removal of especially black iron oxide and
ferric oxide 3.
Really incredible. This particular book, I'm going to do a quick summary of it, and then we'll use it to sort of transition into the leaf casting. But this particular book, there's a whole series on the professor's YouTube channel for this All American Comics. You see the cover here is well loved, as I like to say. The interior is still quite nice with these rust stains, other problems from obvious deep water infiltration at some point in the past. But you use the rust removal to the evaporust to remove rust at all the joint at all the staple joints here. And then those that were actually where the paper was acidified by the rust and weak, you just excised it, and then you did this beautiful, here's the rust removal. You did this beautiful leaf casting here.
Wow.
So
it came out beautiful.
The last panel here. So the panel on the left is actually post evaporust. But this is some red rust that the evaporust doesn't work quite as well on. The panel in the middle is you've excised the paper the weak, destroyed acidic paper to make room for a new casted paper. And then the panel on the right is your casted repaired paper, which is absolutely beautiful. And I said to you, man, we need to talk some more about this. I want to know about your pulp recipe. I want to know about how you apply it. And it's really great to get your insights again as someone who's classically trained as a paper scientist and who's, you know, studied cellulose as a molecule, as a polymer, to get your insights into what we should and shouldn't be doing for leaf casting. So I don't know if you want to say anything else about this, and then I think that you have some more content that we can kind of walk through.
Well, this, unfortunately, I gotta tell you, it's not really a big deal. It's just podcasting, right? So I used some of this, which is
Yeah.
Tone.
tone.
I'm gonna highlight you.
I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah.
So this is cotton rag paper. This is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. This is not newsprint.
Not newsprint.
This is a toned,
Yeah.
tan cotton rag paper. Rag paper has long cellulose fibers.
I'm
strong,
guilty
much
in the
stronger
past.
than
I used
newsprint.
newsprint, right? I have used newsprint in the past. So you can see this is almost like I used a lot of the pages here. So I have used newsprint. I do like the results with newsprint, but it is it's just like the wood pulp in the comics, right? It's going to age very fast eventually, but it's all going to outlast us at the end, right? I mean,
Yeah.
My lifespan now is like that of a cat, you know. So,
You just told us your grandmother lived to be 100. You're
she
young
did,
still.
yeah. So, you know, my dad was also older when he passed away, so all good. So if you go to the next, so this pulp here was newsprint and combination of newsprint and the art, the tone art, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
And what I do is I soak the paper. When you soak them a long time, the fibers get more saturated, so you get better blending. And I blend the hell out of them, right? So I like to get as smooth as possible. And in this
Now, Peter,
case,
I gotta ask, how, when you say a long time, how long are you soaking your paper?
so you can soak them for a day or so, overnight is fine. And then you can blend them.
But tell them about one of the additives you put in when you want to leave it at room temperature for a day.
So what you do, you add sodium propionate, which is what they use in the baking industry and the bread industry.
An antifungal.
Antifungal,
Yeah.
So if you're gonna keep your pulp at room temperature for like say 5 days, fungi will grow, right? Sodium propionate is ideal to arrest the growth of fungi in these media, right? So I use sodium propionate over calcium propionate, right? It's just better overall, safer.
Now, I got a question for you, chemistry geniuses. I do keep it at room temperature, stored in blender jars on the shelf. But instead of using water when I'm doing it, I'm using a calcium hydroxide mixture. Are my mold spores still going to form in that?
So most mold are like acidic environments. They grow between pH 4.5 and 6, I would say. That's their preference for most molds.
Okay.
There are alkalophilic molds out there, and they could grow at alkaline pH as high as 8.0.
No.
Depending on the pH of your medium, right? So you're going to have either some, but are they, the other thing, are they?
My pH is right around 8.
8,
Yeah.
yeah. So it
I
is
would
a
say-
possibility. I mean, best thing to do is actually refrigerate your pulp. I know Jerry the Jitterbug does that. He refrigerates his pulp, and it really
I'm
works.
afraid I'll
because
drink
you
it in
arrest-
the middle
it's
of
like
the
food, essentially. you
But-
don't get the life of the pulp that way. And I usually make enough pulp for the project, and I throw it out afterwards.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I kind of do that too. I have a base color, which I also use the tone paper and the newsprint. as a combination for my base color, and I adjust it with lighter papers or darker, however I want to go. But I do have, like, if I'm doing a whole book, it takes a large quantity.
Yeah.
So I want to use the same color every time. So
Mhm.
yes, I do have leftover stuff, and I'll be fair. I have not checked on it lately. It's
Yeah.
been sitting for a couple of weeks actually in my cabinet in the dark. So probably
So
be worthwhile looking at.
absolutely, if you're gonna like, if you're that's gonna be part of your regular practice, get the calcium propionate. It's inexpensive. It's easy to add. You don't use very much. A jar of it would be a lifetime supply,
Okay.
and
Just
it'll
drop it
save
in
you.
there.
It'll save you one of these times, I think.
I mean,
Okay.
it sounds like too. It is also just an added preventative. Like I guess because like for me, I never even thought to add it because in my mind I was like, it's kind of like a lot of what you said. I'm making stuff for one batch. Like back when I was doing this, for the one use basically for the day, and then whatever's done is done. So I was like, I never need to add that in. When I was making wheat paste to do traditional conservation, it wasn't making a ton. I mean, I only ever needed, the amount that could go in one of those little paint trays.
Yep.
But in this case here, I always just will refrigerate my pulp and then use it almost immediately for like how much I've made. It's just the way that I do it. So I never even thought to add it in. But really it is.
But for
if
us
you're gonna let it
hobbyists,
sit out at all.
yeah, but for us hobbyists, I mean, and these golden age books have 16 wraps, and you've got a day job
Once you
and
start
a
making that
family,
much pulp.
and you want to make one batch so that it's a consistent color all the way through.
Well, your fridge only has so much
absolutely.
room too, so I get it. That's part of it.
The propionate's an absolute, in my mind, an absolute must if you're doing things best practice.
Yeah, because I'm getting ready to switch over to a water flow table like what Phil has, and so where we measure the pulp out. So I probably won't be making up as much, but still, if I'm going to store a common color, if I'm going to do a 16-page wrap, I mean, I want to keep the same colors.
Yeah, Shelby mentions another option. You can also dry it out, and then you can rehydrate it again later. If you're going to be interrupted in your work and you want to keep a consistent color. So that's another option.
I have done that as well. I have a paper pulp and little paddles look like hockey pucks.
Yeah.
If you like the batch you make more of it, and just like Shelby said, dry it and just but do add sodium propionate to it, because the drying time if you drive it in the oven, it's not a good idea, I think.
Now, is it sodium propionate or calcium
calcium
propionate?
Both, either one is fine, but their studies showed sodium propionate is better at inhibiting molds.
Yeah, it's a more effective mold inhibitor.
I'm typing on Amazon as we're speaking.
Yeah.
So mold, the thing about mold, of course, is aerobic and highly resistant to a lot of biocides, but not sodium propionate. It doesn't like it.
Can I ask maybe a stupid question then? So what would be the added benefit if you're going to refrigerate it but not put it in? Like, what extra time span do you get? Or rather, does the consistent temperature of the fridge make it so the mold's never going to grow within that certain temperature? Is that like a stupid question to ask?
So it's like a thing with me being a microbiologist. Like, if you were to just put it in the fridge, it's fine. I don't think there is anything wrong with that. And use it the same, after a day or two is fine, right? I don't think there's any problem with that. But I think if you have it for a long time sitting at room temperature, then sodium propionate would help.
Yeah.
It may not inhibit bacteria, though. Bacteria now need something else, right?
So another benefit that I see is you putting the sodium propionate in the paper that you're casting, that's staying in there.
Yeah.
And then
It is a preventative.
especially when you're drying your newly casted page, let's say you got busy, you forgot to change out your paper towels, and it sits damp for 2 or 3 days before you finish drying it out.
Yeah.
You're protected now. Whereas if you didn't have that in there, when you remember to come back, you're going to have fungal bloom in your newly casted paper, and you're going to be redoing all that, and you're going to be sad about it.
Yeah. And not all
So it's just
fungi.
it gives you a layer of protection and basically margin for error for life happening in my estimation.
And you're not going
Yeah.
out of your way really to add it.
No, it's you're making up a solution anyway. You're
Yep.
you're putting you're
Exactly.
getting your little measuring. You're putting it in. You're mixing it up. You're on your way.
And the other thing is, not all fungi are cellulolytic in nature. Some are, some aren't. But there are those who are. They piggyback on other fungi that are cellulolytic, and they end up eating the byproduct of those, and they end up growing on the paper as well. So you have that double whammy kind of thing going on. that you have to be careful with.
All the
So I think
problems we have to
sodium propionate is
deal
a
with.
fantastic thing to add.
Yeah.
0.5% concentration, guys, is what I use it at.
Yep.
So
25%.
That's also in his video.
0.5%.
0.5.
Half a gram
Okay.
per 100 mils.
So, like you said, one package will go a long ways.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And next slide.
Very cool.
So this is still Evaporust, right? So keep going.
Yeah.
Evaporust really work on Batman too.
Yeah. This was a beautiful conservation project. Look at
Yeah,
this
I
cover
remember
before
this one.
and the cover after.
I
Yeah.
thought that was an
Great
amazing
job.
job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I've lost some colors though. That's the thing. And this is the pulp that. So you can see this pulp on the lower right. That I did that for Dr. Poole just quickly yesterday, and you can see how it really held very well. So I was demonstrating and ended up
Guys.
ripping, right?
Yeah. So guys, he was
I
showing
did it
me
again.
how well this bonded. And so he's pulling on the fresh pulp. The bond is so strong, it didn't tear away from the paper. It tore the paper itself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Paper got
I've come
torn.
across that too. I end up tearing the paper and not the.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the same wrap, Dr. Poole. I
Well
showed you.
bonded.
Mhm.
Nice.
Really well bonded. You can see it.
Yeah.
And this is Abaca. I'm using Abaca here, so I'll show you how it looks like.
We have sacrificial romance
so
comics.
I
apparently.
use
Abaca.
bleach
okay.
Abaca.
Abaca bleach, yeah.
Yeah. Abaca has a color to it, so they bleach it, but it doesn't change the properties of the paper itself. It's very thick paper, difficult to rip. You can stain it though. And if you stain it, there is a video on my channel on how to stain it with tea. And you can use retention aids
Yeah.
to have the tea color, which is now in solution in the water, gets attracted to the fibers, end up stuck to the fibers now. So now the fibers are stained, but the water is clear. So when you do, like this was done in tea, and you can see
Cool.
that the color is really, I'm not sure if I can show it to you.
Yeah, it's
There
pretty
No,
close.
the color
Color is very
looks great.
close. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I did here, I did here. So this
Mhm.
wrap is just an experimental wrap, the same wrap I showed Dr. Paul yesterday, but I stained the pulp afterwards. And the nice thing about it is that when you are doing the leaf casting, you notice that some of the things sticking out from the wrap looks like Tengujo almost quality. These long fibers. Abaca
Because of
has
the
a
long, strong fibers.
beautiful,
yeah.
long, strong fibers.
Like mulberry.
At mulberry, yeah, exactly. So it's a
from-
derivative of a relative of the banana tree, and they grow in the Philippines, the abaca plants. They grow very tall, apparently, and they're quite everywhere in the Philippines. And they end up decorticizing the cover, and they end up getting the pulp and squeeze it, and they make it into paper, essentially.
Yeah, it's
They
really
make it
strong
into
fiber.
paper so that we can then dismantle it and make it into paper. To
It's good
repair our
paper.
comic books.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to talk about
So,
this
Yeah.
your leaf casting process, and I wanted to talk about
okay.
the sizing agents and
So the sizing-
rest of the recipe.
Sizing agents, you can. So I got this. If you can see it,
Yeah, I'm
called
gonna highlight you.
ketene dimer emulsion.
Yeah, hold that up so we can see it. This is a sizing agent
It's like
from Remind me
House.
where you bought this?
Carriage House.
Carriage House, right? Carriage House is online vendor of custom papers and all of your paper making supplies. And so this is the sizing that you prefer, or one of the ones that can be used. And there are some advantages to this sizing over some of the other sizings that folks
This
use.
sizing is used in the paper industry. It's called alkyl ketene dimer. And I think this particular one, this emulsion here that you see inside is a cationic starch.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
they use it. So cationic starch alone is a sizing agent, right?
again,
Well, yeah.
links in the description. He's got video series on this as well with information. So you don't have to write it down here. Go check him out, his channel.
Yeah, so this is all like new discoveries, right? Do I have a video on this particular one?
I think that you mentioned it in the
have
video
mentioned
that you use it.
Yeah,
I went and looked at their product description sheet,
yeah,
and one of the things that I liked about it is they actually tell you what percent of that. So that comes already pre-mixed in a liquid state, and
Yeah.
they tell you how much of that to use in your pulp
yeah,
to have an internally sized leaf cast.
yeah.
And that
Very
is
little.
exactly what I want to be doing.
Yeah,
So-
it's really very little. You don't use much of it, and
No.
it's really well sized. I mean, the paper is really so well sized.
Well, I don't think it's by accident that you have this
No.
beautiful, and guys, this is no suction table.
No suction table.
This is just spot cast.
Look at the. I mean, you can just tell from that right picture how smooth and the consistency of the paper fibers looks like that. Like just from the photo, you can tell if you like close your eyes and rub your finger over that, you're going to be like, maybe you can tell that there's a piece added. But maybe if you
Doubtful.
don't know to look for it, you don't even know exactly where you can. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and Phil, it matches really well, and it bends nicely, and it doesn't break. And
awesome.
this particular one, like I always use cellulose, metal cellulose on my leaf casting in the past because it keeps breaking, right? Not this stuff. This stuff you don't need.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So it's like this this sample I made, no metal cellulose at all, which is really nice. So it's just so what it is just the abaca. You need to bloom it for, say overnight, and then blend it really well. Lots and lots of water, and a little bit of it will make you a lot of pulp, right?
Yeah. And you use very dilute pulp, but you
very
could use
dilute.
this sizing agent. You can use this sizing agent with the toned tan cotton rag paper you showed us. You can use this with any
Yeah,
of the pulps
exactly.
that you showed us.
You sure can.
Yeah. I mean, these
And,
typically I didn't use sizing with them because this is already sized, so I didn't figure out I won't size it. And this one I thought I won't probably size it, but I ended up sizing it anyways. Like the one sample I showed you yesterday wasn't sized. This is sized.
Yeah.
This is pressed well, at least. This
Really nice, really beautiful.
So
So I wanted, we're all doing this a little bit differently, and we're all one of the reasons we have the Facebook group, one of the reasons we have this show, one of the reasons we have guests on, is because we want to learn from one another. We want to build on one another's work, and sort of keep advancing our sort of corner of the hobby, right? And in a collaborative way. And
Yeah.
so again, I appreciate everybody's openness and sharing here. And I really wanted to talk about these things because you're doing it a little bit differently than what some of the other folks in our group are doing, and I think in a very smart way. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your willingness to share and the openness on it.
You're welcome. And keep in mind, this is like stuff I started doing like last 3 weeks. So you guys are getting like the fresh information here,
Yeah.
and it really works beautifully, right?
Well,
It's
yes, but let's not discount the decades you spent working on, in this field and working
Learning
on, and learning the chemistry here and everything, right? It really serves you well. And now it serves all of us well, again, because of your openness to sharing and your collaborative nature. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and there is a
Yeah.
lot in the paper industry people do different, right? Like there's like something called process aids, and there is the function aids, right?
Yeah.
But in the process aids, these things are added by the paper manufacturer without you knowing, right? Function aids is something you want to add, you can add, right? like the
Mhm.
sodium propionate, for example. You don't need to add
Yep.
it, but you can add it. You know?
Mhm.
So this
Absolutely.
is like trial and error, right? Some things don't work. I move on, and some things work, and this is one of them that really works.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to share it with you guys.
That's one of the reasons like why they don't teach classes on this stuff in gen. It's hard because there's so many different types of paper. This is such a this is specifically old comic books, and within the errors there's some variety. So it's like
Oh yeah.
like the paper sizing agents weren't made to size comic books; they were just made to size paper. So there's so many different types
Exactly.
of what makes the most sense to work with
Yeah.
this, and that is a
And
constant.
Peter
Um,
has some on his channel. He's got videos using gelatin as a sizing agent as well, which I also think is great. But I want to
I
get some
just
of this
did-
and try
did
it
the-
out.
Yeah, I did the
But
gelatin on
I
a book
can't
recently. It
help-
came out great.
I
Yeah.
can't help it. Like 45 minutes ago or so, when you had one of the articles pulled up, Peter, that you were talking about, unless I'm mistaken, it was dated 2023. So
yeah,
like,
it's new.
I mean, some of the stuff really is like they're figuring this stuff out
Oh,
now in the
Yeah.
paper. You know,
There's
in
a
the-
whole
in the
world.
industry.
Jane Assay is last year, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
There's a
crazy.
whole world of people that this is their profession, is paper conservation. This is what I'm trying to like open people's eyes up to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, I don't know how many hundred, maybe thousands of people working around the world, full-time professional paper conservators, and some of them are doing novel research and publishing it for our benefit. And those of you that are not tapping into that are missing out, because there's so much great information out there.
Yeah.
So
And
I think we have.
communicated with the authors of that paper also. You know, I
Yeah,
wrote
that's the
them
other great thing.
an
Like
email.
scientists love to know that
That's
somebody
awesome.
just read their stuff. I mean, they're happy
Yeah.
to share with
Very
you.
cool.
Yeah. Like one of the things I said to him, I said, "Do you work?" The assay didn't work on my fungi, and he's like, you know,
Get a new
"It's gone,
fungi."
buddy. You know, you can't do much about these kind of books. Yeah. So sometimes
think
you
we
have
have
to put a point final to it and say, "I'm done." Yeah.
We have a couple of fun summary and wrap up slides here.
This
But
is
just
retention.
briefly, let's mention the sizing agent and the retention aids that you
So
talked about.
retention aid is a secret formula. It's a polymer, right? It's a cationic polymer that you add.
I mean, the one that you bought that's available commercially is the secret agent. But the
Magic.
point,
Oh,
if I can zoom out, let me zoom out. So the purpose of the retention agent is that if you're going to use a dye to
Yeah.
color match your pulp,
Yeah.
you need to be mindful that that dye is probably water soluble and it can migrate into the rest of your paper. And you may end up staining paper that you don't want to stain. So the
Yeah.
purpose of the retention agent is to basically fix the dye in your pulp so that it's not going to migrate into the rest of your paper, right?
Yeah.
And so this is one that's commercially available. And sorry to sort of interrupt, but it's commercially available, and the actual chemical recipe here is proprietary. It's not known to us.
It's
But
a cationic agent is all they tell you about it, right? So
Yeah.
what it does, it attracts the smaller particles, nanoparticles. They use it in paper industry also, right?
Mhm.
So nanoparticulates that are left in the water basically gets sucked into the fiber.
Mhm.
You end up with
And then you end up with a tide,
that you
just the
add-
same way that tide lines work, right? In your
yeah,
paper.
just like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So any
So this is also from Carriage House.
yeah, carriage house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have tea, for example, the same thing. You add the tea first, you color your pulp, and then add like a mil of this. And within like 15 minutes, all the tea is in the pulp. And
Not
the water
no
is-
longer in the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, you demonstrated this very well, just for people like just like for a visual. You had one solution, one pulp mix that didn't have the retention agent, and another one that did, and you took an eyedropper and you dropped some on paper towel surface, and you could see the one with the retention agent. All the color was right in the center where the pulp mixture was, and the
Correct.
other one, the color spread out.
Right.
Like Paul said, like a watermark. Like
Right.
that visual demonstration, seeing that and how it worked is very
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
very,
very
very
cool.
telling. And actually, this particular rack I did also had retention aid in the pulp. So you don't
Yeah.
see any staining on the paper itself, which is nice.
So this is really this is why I wanted to have the professor on. I mean, his channel is really, one of the other nice things is his videos are very short. But there's just a treasure trove of information from somebody who's actually classically trained in paper chemistry, and I really applaud it. I'm thrilled to have him as a friend, thrilled to have him in the Facebook group, and really thrilled that you joined us here, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you so
it.
much. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have a couple fun slides here
Towards the end.
that we can just kind of wrap up with, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody.
That sounds good. So, just final thoughts on comic books conservation. All comics are finite, and they have inherent vices or qualities to them, like the acid buildup because of the nature of the wood pulp. So that's called an inherent vice. You can't help it. Over time, even Action Comics #1 is going to be dust, essentially, ultimately. For conservation, always practice on cheap books, not expensive books, and do your research, but get the equipment. Listen to other people's videos. I listen to Jerry, I listen to Dr. Paul, listen to you, to Larry, right? Listen to other people, Shelby, I've been listening to. I learned a lot from all of you guys, and I really appreciate.
Well, we learn from each other, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. And then we have the Facebook page, which I love, so we share our work tips with each other all the time. And do it because you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Why are you bothering? If it's going to be sloppy job after like 5 years, you didn't get there, don't just give up. Don't do anything after that, right? And this is a quote from Salvador Dali that Jerry puts in his videos. It says, "Have no fear of perfection, you'll never reach it." And he's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Is that we all are humans. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to try different things that may not work. Eventually, you get there. And thank you for
And eventually you get there in Salem, Massachusetts.
this is Halloween. I bumped into Hocus Pocus characters there. And then this is me and Dr. Paul by the Samantha statue in Salem.
Samantha's also a hugger, guys.
Absolutely.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all the viewers. We took a whole hour and a half of your life, but I'm really glad to see you here with us. We appreciate all of you. Appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up, like the video, share it with a friend. Definitely go visit Peter and Larry and Jerry and Shelby's channels, and definitely come check us out on the Facebook group as well. Thanks to everybody again for sticking around this long. Unbothered Kitty still here. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate seeing you. Everyone, have a great week, and until next time, take care of one another. Bye now.
Bye.
See ya.